Welcome you everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in this webinar hosted by the Urantia Association's Education Committee. This webinar is presented today by Sheila Keene-Lund about the theme, A Journey Towards Understanding the Will of God. Now let me introduce you our presenter. Sheila stands as a beacon of inspiration in nonfiction and spiritual writing. Her works have consistently provided comforts and insight to many seeking guidance and spiritual understanding. Sheila was born to an English father and a Puerto Rican mother in Vigo, Spain. She is the third of 4 sisters. Her family lived in Cuba, England, and Puerto Rico before moving to the Eastern Caribbean island of Saint Lucia, where she attended a convent school, grew up, eventually married, and had 3 sons. Sheila lives in Central Florida, USA. She's a longtime student of the Urantia book and the author of the books Heaven is Not the Last Stop and Awakening to the Spirit of the Father. Sheila has served as Education Committee Chair of Urantia Association International and Vice President of the Urantia Association of Florida. In the past 6 years, Sheila has embarked on a deeply personal and transformative journey triggered by her husband's devastating Alzheimer's diagnosis. This experience throws her into the complex and often bewildering world of dementia caregiving. Sheila leads classes and workshops on the practical application of the extraordinary principles in her various books, some yet to be published. Welcome, Sheila. The session is yours. Thank you very, very much.
Shall I share? I'm going to share your screen, right? Let me just, let's see. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, good, great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be here and share with you my personal journey to understanding the will of God. And Jeannie gave quite a sorrow story of my life. So I will continue. I will ask that if any of you have questions, we can do it after the presentation. Also, if you want to communicate with me, you can do so either through my email or you can do it through my website. Again, very excited to be here. So are we ready to start? Yes. So, okay, so journey to understanding the will of God. As Jeannie had said, I began reading the Urantia book in 1991. And I came about reading it because I had a question. It was a question about Adam and Eve, and eventually brought me to the Urantia book. I read the Urantia book for a couple of chapters, and then I put it down for 6 years. And I put it down for 6 years because I found it very confusing. And I didn't quite understand, it clashed, the concept of creator sons. So during the 6 years that I put it away, I did a lot of research, a lot of soul searching. Eventually, I ended up acknowledging that I needed to explore the Urantia book. And it started me on writing Heaven is Not the Last Stop. One of the things that I found confusing was the concept of the will of God. And so let me see if I can get this moving. Okay, so one of the things that I found most confusing was like, what is the difference between God's will and the thought adjuster's will or plan for me? I found that really confusing. And so I thought, okay, I need to do a little research between the two of those things and try and understand, because how can I do the will of God if I don't understand what it is? So God's will. So the first thing I did was I went to the internet And believe it or not, these are some of the things that you find. So some of the things that they say is to obey God's revealed will for how we should live, that everyone who beholds the Son and believes in him will have eternal life, to advance the kingdom, to be saved, to do what he commands or what he tells us is right to do. God's will is whatever God decides will come to pass. Well, these are just some of the things that you find in the internet. And to me, I could not understand what that was. It didn't give any direction. So I had to delve deeper into what God's will was, and I went to the Urantia book. The Urantia book says that God's will and purpose is to elevate all will creatures to the high destiny of the experience of sharing the Father's paradise perfection. So at least that was clear. I wasn't quite sure what perfection, but at least it was clear. I then looked on to see what Jesus said about God's will. And he basically said the same thing: be you perfect, even as your paradise Father is perfect. So I had something clear, but I wasn't quite sure how to move from here. But I thought, okay, let me explore about the thought adjuster. So what did the thought adjuster? So what is the indwelling spirit's plan for me? Well, what I found in the Urantia didn't help me much. It said the adjusters begin work with a definite and predetermined plan for the intellectual and spiritual development of the human subjects. But it is not incumbent upon any human being to accept this plan. Acceptance is a choice. So this totally left me confounded because, how can I accept a plan that I don't know what it is? And what is that plan? So it totally confused me. And remember, I was beginning to read the Urantia book, and I thought, this thing about the thought adjuster is too confusing. I'm not going to really deal with that. So I'm going to try and find out about about God's will. So when I asked myself, what should I focus on the Father's will of the indwelling spirit's plan for me, I decided I would focus on doing the Father's will. But of course, there were some questions that came up. What does it mean to do the will of God? And how do I grow in perfection? When I read things, people would say, well, love one another, but it's not easy to love people that you don't particularly like. It's not easy to, love somebody that treats you badly. So I wasn't quite sure how that all could manifest. So I decided I would continue reading the Urantia book. Now, remember, this is all when I was beginning to get the Urantia book, read the Urantia book. So when I read the Urantia book, I deduced the following. The journey to achieving spiritual perfection begins here on earth and extends into the afterlife. So this is a long time. This path entails growing in attunement with our indwelling spirit or thought adjuster by developing a noble character, a well-balanced personality. And to achieve this, one must spiritualize the mind by nurturing its three fundamental qualities: cosmic insight, moral consciousness, and spiritual perception. So this is all from the Urantia book, right? And then as I read Jesus, I realized that he described this process as nurturing a spiritual character that mirrors the divine essence present within one's soul. So by the time I read this, I realized, I felt I was in the right track. At least I was beginning to get something that was concrete that I could work with. So my next step, now, coming from a process analysis background, I viewed the development of the mind and growth of character as a process. This was a process. So to achieve this, I needed to identify the critical elements and determine the specific activities that were necessary to reach my goal. Okay, so I treated this like a work project. Okay, so this took me a while. Oops, let me see if I can go back. This took me a while, but I developed this process or framework. So first of all, it had to have the foundation. The foundation is what God's will is for us, which is to grow in perfection. But then I had to personalize it. I had to say, okay, what is my purpose based on his purpose? And then I also knew I had to have standards. What was the standard that I have to live by, or that I can have an idea of as I do my activities, so what I'm supposed to do. The other thing was measurement. How do we measure what we do? How do we know that we are having results, right? What are the outcomes that we can expect? And what are the action steps? What do I do? Or what is my plan to do the will of God? Now, what I'm going to share with you now it is mostly in my book, Heaven is Not the Last Stop, but I want to stress that this is my plan. So I hope that as we go through this, you'll find something that is useful, that you can customize for yourself. You don't have to do everything that I do, but this is what I did. I'm just sharing with you my journey. Okay. So the foundation, divine purpose. So God said, be you perfect as a Father in paradise is perfect. So I needed to interpret that. And so the way that I interpreted was live life directed towards God, spiritualizing the inner life, which is the mind, to grow a spiritual character. So to me, that was to grow a character increasingly attuned to my indwelling spirit, or Sota adjuster. So I needed to develop the character. Now remember that I always felt I had a good character. So I wasn't quite sure what all this was going to lead to, but I figured I was just trying to understand logically what I was going to be doing. So my purpose, when I first started, my purpose was to develop the well-balanced, God-knowing personality so that I may express the qualities of divinity and live the brotherhood of man. So that was my intention. After a few years, I extended it a little bit. And I said my purpose was to develop a well-balanced, God-knowing personality so that as I grow in attunement with my Sota adjuster, I can increasingly express the qualities of divinity, thereby doing my part to help usher in the kingdom of God on earth, a world in which everyone recognizes they're indwelt by the Spirit of the Father and strive to grow in attunement, which to me is living the brotherhood of man. So that part, I added it after I read the Jesus's papers. I saw this seems to be in alignment with what Jesus wants. Now, this thing is very important. The purpose and intention must be supported by living faith. You must believe that you have the power to create what you intend without knowing how it will manifest or how it feels once you get there. Now that is, I believe, the most important thing of anything that we do, because we're trying to do something that we have no idea what it looks like or how it feels. If you already think you're kind and you're thoughtful and you're considerate, what does it mean to be even more kind and considerate if you're trying to develop that perfection? You have no idea. Neither, they tell you you're going to have peace in the world. You have no idea what that even looks like because we haven't experienced it. So I felt, okay, I believe that I can work on myself and be one person amongst the many that can perhaps create this world that we want to live in and that Jesus intended us to create. So intention is very important when you set out to do something that you're not sure of, or you're not sure how it's going to look at the end. So in order to support my intention so that my Sota adjuster knew exactly what I was trying to do, I would say, it is my will, Father, to do your will. And I say that at least 10 times a day. Because that's my will. And I don't know if what I'm doing is his will, but it's my will to do your will. The other thing is I say, and I love this one, my judge and knower, guide me in all I think and do. Give me thy light and the light of thy knower. Let me always be conscious of thee, that I may do all my duty and be consciously at one with thee. I say that at least, I don't know, 5 or 6 times a day. I love it. I consider my judge and my knower to be my thought adjuster. And when I ask for, the light of thy knower, I consider that the Father. So to me, I have been saying that for 20 years. And I just think it's very powerful. So the standards, what are the standards? Now, I got all of these from the Urantia book, so I didn't make them up. So 1, treat everyone with a selfless attitude of a wise and loving parent. And if I'm not saying it word by word from the Urantia, it is deduced from the Urantia book. Okay. Maintain a student attitude when functioning as a teacher. So basically, I use that as my standard. So I could question my actions using these standards. How would I measure? So I assess every action and interaction by the unbearing test. What does it do for my soul? Does it bring God to me and others? Does it bring me and others to God? This is what Jesus used to use as a standard. So this is how I would measure it. Is it bringing me closer to God? Is what I'm doing helping me get closer? How do we know whether we are being successful in our efforts to grow in character? So indicators from our individual efforts, the way I looked at it is the quality and extent of the fruits of the Spirit that we manifest. Now, this goes back to what I just said earlier, that, if you're kind and you're loving and you're a good person, how can you be more than that? And I believe that you don't really know until you experience it. You all of a sudden feel either increasing empathy, increasing knowingness when you're dealing with people, increasing feeling of connection. But I'm sure everybody experiences something different, but there is a difference. There is a marked difference that you can look back and say to yourself of what it was like maybe 10 years or 7 years ago and now. Also, the growing commitment to continued growth. The journey to paradise is super long that starts here. And I think we have learned from reading the Urantia book that evolution is very slow. It's very slow. We would love to know that we can be perfect in our lifetime to the level of perfection where we could maybe fuse our indwelling spirit or something. But I'm beginning to discover it's not that easy, and it doesn't move that fast. But it's just a continuous thing, just like Jesus used to do, like continuously working on his own character. So therefore, it's just a growing commitment, one thing at a time, one small thing at a time, always with the intention that our intention is to connect with our thought adjuster so that we can manifest those qualities of divinity without even thinking about it, just in our actions. And indicators within society that demonstrate a unified understanding of God among a substantial number of people. So what will show to us, what will show our world that we have a critical mass thinking or feeling the same way, or having the same understanding of doing the will of God and actively being engaged. And what we'll find is there will be peace. There will be unity in the understanding that we're all indwelt by the Spirit of the Father. And I believe this is what is means by establishing the kingdom of God on earth. Okay, and then we'll have social progress, not just progress that keeps moving forward and then goes back, and then it just continues progressing towards light. Okay, so then it was my plan. So now I had my standards and everything else. So now is what am I going to do? Like, what are the activities to do? Now, these activities that I'm going to share with you, I did them for, I would say, 10 years, every day. I did 1 or 2 or 3. I have no idea what I was doing. It was very interesting, but I sort of have no idea how this thing is going to connect me with God or make my character more noble or whatever. But I thought, I had no idea if I would ever communicate with a thought adjuster. I didn't even understand him very well, but it was my intention to. So here's my plan. So I thought, okay, I have to identify activities that help me cultivate my cosmic insight, moral choice, and spiritual perception. And it was obviously still for the purpose of developing a well-balanced, God-knowing personality. You have to constantly remind yourself of what your purpose is. What is your own will? Why are you doing this? So, and then I would always connect this that Jesus talked about developing character. So I would always say, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing these things for that reason. So cosmic insight. So to me, this was understanding the relationship between love and the mind was a game changer. It was, to me, gave me so much peace, because a lot of people would tell me, why are you reading this big fat book, and why are you trying to, do these things? All you have to do is love. All you have to do is love. But there's a lot of people that go to church and that pray and read books, and they've committed these murders and whatever. So to me, there was a disconnect. So when I found a couple of things here, it gave me a lot of peace. So I discovered that 60 to 65% of all the cells in the heart are neural cells, which are precisely the same as in the brain, functioning in precisely the same way. Humans were created and wired to know God. The more that we know and understand God, the more we experience His love. The heart is where we feel love, and the mind is where the thought adjuster, indwelling spirit, fosters the love of God and individualizes the Father's love in each human soul, so we can increasingly express it in our words and actions. It is through the mind that we can know and love God and our neighbors. We don't love people automatically. The more we know them, the more we get to love them. But it's still, you have to know. The knowing is increasingly important. And this came from William P. Young from the chat, which I love it. So many people believe that love grows, but it is knowing that grows, and love simply expands to contain it. Love is just the skin of knowing. I love that quote. So I realized that the more I could know and understand God, the more that the thought adjuster will be able to increase that capacity, the more I'll be able to increase the capacity to love not only God, but other people without even thinking about it. So that really excited me. So the next thing I did was explore your beliefs in the light of biblical revelation. And that's what I did with my book, Heaven Is Not the Last Stop. I originally wanted to disprove the Urantia book. There were things in it that just freaked me out, and I wanted to disprove them wrong. But so what I did is I thought, okay, if I explore my beliefs, my Catholic beliefs, and kind of also my New Age beliefs, and I very neutral, in a neutral manner, explore those in light of research, archaeology, science, history, and the Urantia book, then I would have some greater understanding, or I would realize that my beliefs were the best, or no, I can expand them, or whatever. There would be something. So exploring your beliefs in the light of epochal revelation is super important, because you discover new meanings. Ask questions to discover new meanings in your understanding of a deity. Don't just accept what you know, but question it. Be open to psychic conflict and spiritual agitation in your quest to clarify your spiritual vision. If you don't experience conflict, if you haven't experienced conflict in your beliefs, then the chances are that you are accepting things as are given to you. I found that you need the conflict to be able to really make your brain work and connect things, and in order to be able to expand your vision. So psychic conflict is important. Your efforts to better comprehend universe reality will develop your capacity to build a more accurate, consistent, and comprehensive model of reality. Now, some people might say this is not important. Like I just had somebody who decided they don't believe in God, and they told me none of this is important. I told them it's not important, maybe for your own personal thing, but for progress, for you to progress, it is important to develop a more comprehensive and consistent model of reality, because it gives you that aspiration, that awe of what you're part of. And that is what's missing in the world. Our, having this incredible admiration for God and our desire to become as one with Him. And so I believe that the more we do grow in our understanding of the connections between spirit and matter, it has a tremendous impact in our excitement to grow in our love and knowledge of the Father. The other one, cultivate the quality of thinking. One of the things I did, I took a 6-month course on critical thinking. It nearly broke my brain, but I definitely took it, and it was very interesting. Develop a critical thinking skill to heighten self-reflection and gain an understanding of your own biases and areas for improvement. So this is a really good, I found it very useful. Read nonfiction books to make real-world connections. Write persuasive essays to practice your logic and reasoning abilities. I would sit down and I would write an essay like every 2 or 3 days, just to see if I made sense of anything of what I was learning. Engage in understanding science to build knowledge about the natural world. This was really challenging because, science is forever growing, and then you're trying to connect it with the Urantia book. But even though it was challenging, it was very rewarding. Work on riddles and puzzles and play challenging games to improve problem-solving skills, and discuss current issues and controversies to develop your ability to consider issues for yourself rather than relying on the authority or expertise of others. Most people basically accept what they're told if they like it, and they don't question it. So it's good to question what you believe and figure out why is it that you believe what you believe? What is the effect that is having on you? So cultivating the quality of thinking is super important. Cultivate sound taste. For me, this was the hardest one. I realized I don't think I had a lot of sound taste. I'm not very good at about music, so what I did is I studied art. I took a 6-month course on art appreciation, and that was absolutely amazing. I would go to the museums, and I would sit in front of a painting, and I would try to describe what I saw, and then I would listen to the video that was there, that was explaining what the painting was about, and you would discover these amazing things about the painting. But then what you realize is that the more you're able to appreciate music and art, you're able to see how it connects so deeply with God and your inner self. So that was really a very good exercise. Also deepen your recognition of your body as a temple of divinity to improve health and well-being and foster own appreciation. This is something that I told myself all the time, that my indwelling spirit is, I need my body for my indwelling spirit there to guide me. So therefore, you just watch what you eat, see how you take care of your body. And engage in activities like planting, weeding, gardening for joy, quiet time, contemplation, and hope. So the next one, moral awareness. So we've done cosmic insight. So moral awareness now. So how do we develop moral awareness? That one we have, most of us have a lot of ideas, and we do a lot of that. So building an ethical society, beginning with your own life, listen attentively to others. And that is something that I personally try to work on all the time, because I tend to sometimes not listen well enough. So I try to work on that. Work on being sensitive to the feelings of others. Let go of negativity, practice gratitude, repeat positive affirmations, spend time with people who uplift you, take up a hobby, exercise, or learn something new. This is super, super important. Do we practice gratitude? To me, I get up every morning and I speak with my indwelling spirit and say how grateful I am for my life, for everything that has happened in my life. Even the fact that I lost my husband 4 months ago. Grateful for all the years that we had, for all the things that we did together, how he helped me with my first book. He always supported. So always think of all the things that you can be grateful for. And gratitude really touches your heart. So that one is super important. Improve trustworthiness by checking your honesty, honoring commitments, admitting when you're wrong, and working on vulnerability. Not all of us feel comfortable doing those things. So if you don't feel comfortable, then try to do it. Sometimes it can get a little bit, where it becomes obsessive. Like the other day, I went to the grocery store, and when I checked my bag, when I got to the car, I realized that there was something I hadn't paid for. So I didn't feel like going up and going back out to the store and returning. It was just a little thing, but it kept bugging my mind when I got into the car. So eventually I did it. But maybe that's a little bit obsessive, but that's when you're trying to work on certain qualities, then you have to be aware of all these different things. Practice forgiveness. Not everybody finds that easy. And volunteer. Help one random person daily. Practice empathy and make yourself available for friends and family. And notice that I say practice empathy. I don't believe that we're automatically empathetic, but I think if we practice it enough, it starts becoming where you actually feel it, where you actually have that connection with someone that it can make a big difference in their lives. So that's sharpening moral awareness. Another thing that we need to do is cultivate emotional maturity. works through unresolved feelings that evoke fear, anger, envy, jealousy, suspicion, and intolerance. By learning to recognize triggers, those words, images, sounds, or situations that evoke an intense emotional reaction. This is something that many of us are not even aware when it happens. Something upsets us, something and we react. And we need to understand those triggers because they help us be better people and help us be better partners and friends. So being aware of this, and it's quite amazing how sometimes somebody has to bring it up to your attention, and only if you're willing to do something about it are you going to do something about it. And the thing about it is, not all the time do we think that these things have anything to do with, thought adjuster attunement or having a novel character. If we're triggered, we always can blame it to somebody else. But in reality, is if we are able to recognize it and do something about it, there is just something that happens to our character that becomes more calm, becomes more, it just changes. But it does take work because this is not easy. So keep a diary to help you identify your emotions. I did this for 22 years. Engage in self-reflection. Develop a growth mindset to welcome improvement and welcome new challenges. And by the way, you can engage in self-reflection, and sometimes having a friend that makes you self-reflect is good. So asking somebody on what you could work is always a good idea. Develop a growth mindset to welcome improvement and welcome new challenges. And that's important. We tend to get stuck in what we believe and what we know. And then we lose that spark for life that gets us wanting to move forward and wanting to do something. So developing a growth mindset is super important. And then set healthy boundaries. What are you feeling comfortable with, what you're not, and being able to share it with people. Recognize and own your mistakes. That's not easy, but recognizing and owning them is important. And then find a role model, a mentor, counselor. That's always helpful also. And work on your self-esteem issues. So some of these things you have to be aware, but asking people, it's amazing how if you ask people, they all of a sudden start telling you things about yourself that you had no idea. So asking somebody, I'm sure they are happy to tell you what you could work on. And engage in anger management if you need to. So those, so we've done moral awareness, and we've done how to come up with activities for developing cosmic insight. Then what about spiritual perception? So develop a consecrated attitude. So what is that? Make a habit of confiding in God. Okay. What I did every morning, I would say hello to my thought adjuster, and I would say the little prayer that I shared with you. And then I would say what I wanted to do. And sometimes I talk to him when I'm driving in the car or when something is bothering me. So I just make it a habit. Then keep growing your understanding of deity to deepen your relationship with God. So you have to determine how much of deity you want to understand. I found the Supreme to be studying about the Supreme and connecting. It's only now that I'm beginning to get it. And then there are other concepts in the Urantia book that make my mind go crook, crook, crook. And I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if I'll ever get to that place, but keep growing on your understanding of God. And that will definitely deepen your relationship. And transmute emotions into devotion. So basically, surrender your feelings to God, trusting in divine guidance. And remember, I say trusting. You have no idea if you're surrendering your feelings that there's going to be a new response. So therefore you trust, and you're hardly ever disappointed. Recognize the blessings in your life, use feelings of gratitude and joy as opportunities to offer praise and thanks to God, and perform acts of service and compassion. And then attuning to spirit guidance. How do we do that? Regularly talk to God, which is basically the same thing as we said before. Pray and meditate to quiet the mind, reduce stress, and increase awareness of divine presence. Acknowledge the presence of your indwelling spirit before beginning your spiritual practice. I added this because I meditated for a long time. I'm a teacher of transcendental meditation, and I meditated a long time, but I always felt there was something missing. And once I learned about the thought adjuster, and when I started reading the Urantia book, every time I started my meditation, before I started, I would recognize the presence of the indwelling spirit. And I remember thinking one day how the thought adjuster must have felt so like an unknown spirit, like totally neglected, because I never acknowledged its presence. And so now maybe the thought adjuster thinks I'm thinking about it too much, but I'd rather continuously try to make that connection. Spend time in silence and solitude to foster a space for connecting more deeply with the divine and being receptive to its guidance. Live with intention. Your actions, decisions, and thoughts will gradually align with your spiritual values. And like I said before, to me, this is the most important, because you never know what you're manifesting, and you're just hoping that through your actions and your intention, things will manifest. Reflect on your experiences, thoughts, and feelings through journaling to help you process and recognize the moments when you feel guided by the divine spirit. I can't overstress how satisfying and insightful it was for me to journal. Because especially when you read it afterwards, when you go back and you read 2 or 3 months, and then you read where you are now, you see the connections, you see the patterns. And so it is quite revealing. Spend time in nature to foster spiritual well-being. So all these activities, like I said to you, I've been doing them for years. And so the question, that I asked myself the other day, I said, I've spent so long doing this, do I feel different than I was when I started, 20 years ago? Are my actions different? Does my heart feel different when I reflect on God or my friends? And so this is what I found. After almost 2 decades of practice, I believe that my approach to doing God's will was fruitful. As I worked through my plan to develop the mind and grow character, that is, doing the will of the Father rather than spending time wondering what the indwelling spirit had planned for me, I believe the predetermined plan of my indwelling spirit was revealed with growing vividness. As I grew in my connection with the indwelling spirit, I became more in tune with his guidance, and my mission to write, and through my writing, help others gain a deeper understanding of God became evident. Awe and gratitude are constant companions. My life feels divinely guided and filled with serendipitous moments, and daily I feel increasing love for God and everyone in my orbit. So to me, my whole I would never have thought that what I experience now and what I have experienced through the years, I would never have imagined it 20 years ago. But I do believe that focusing on growing that noble character that Jesus talked about is what will eventually establish the kingdom of God. I'll share with you that maybe about 9 months ago, I had just finished meditating, and I was just finished sleeping, and I got up to meditate, and all of a sudden I had this in my brain. Or I don't know who it was or how it was or what it was, but it said to write. It told me to write 3 books. One was on the original teachings of Jesus. The other one was the kingdom of God, and the other one was the spirit of the Father. I was able to do the one about the spirit of the Father, but by that time, then my husband became worse, and I focused on him, and I decided I would write a book on how to help people be able to survive, not only survive, but grow in their experience of caring for someone with dementia. So I wrote a book called The Empowered Caregiver's Guide to Dementia. It has a lot of these principles because I found that's what was helping me when I looked at support groups. There were so many people in pain, so many people angry, so many people at their wits' end, taking care of people or taking care of their loved one, but they weren't focusing on how can they adjust their attitude, because we cannot do anything about what happens to us. We can only do how we can accept what's going, what we're experiencing. So I wrote that book, and then I just finished writing a follow-up of that book, because my book was published in 2020, last year, December, and my husband died in January the 8th. And so for those 2 weeks, there was so much that happened that I had to write another book. And it's called What I Wish I Had Known About End-of-Life Dementia Care. And so that one's going to be published next week. Once I finish those 2, because I've been asked to give a lot of presentations on the dementia aspect, I need to finish those 2. I'm going to go back and do those 2 books. The one on the kingdom of God, and I did a lot of research in the kingdom of God, and there is so much confusion that I guess there's a necessity to clarify. So I'm going to try and see what comes out when I write it. Hopefully I'll be able to do that in the next few months. And then I'll work on those 2 books, and then maybe I can relax as far as writing books. But anyway, that's all for me. Thank you. Anybody has any questions or anything that you want to say?
Alfonso, can you please open your microphone? And after Geta, thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. How are you doing, everybody?
Hello, Gita. How are you?
Very good. I love your presentation. I joined a little bit late because I was with another group having a presentation on the same subject you just explored. And through your presentation, you answered one of the main question I had with this other group. And that question was, how can we be sure we are making the will of God, we're doing the will of God in our life? And what you show me through your presentation is a different way you can cultivate spirituality within yourself and grow to love more and to be more attuned to the spirit within us. And in doing so, to effectively do a better job at doing the will of God every day.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I'm glad.
thank you.
Oh,
You did a
you're welcome. So
wonderful
nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. You did a wonderful presentation. I love it. And I will watch it again, the recording of it.
Oh,
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Gaetan.
Hello,
Alfonso, please.
everybody. And I'm very happy to be here. And now I'm very excited about what you've been talking about, Sheila. And like most of us want to know how far are we, or how high are we in our relation with God and in doing God's will, and what you have expressed on your life, and look what you were saying, and there's something that has happened in my life, and I think that we need someone to let us know, hey, you're doing okay, or but what you were saying is about appreciating things, appreciating moments, appreciating nature, uh, discern what is good, what is right, and I'm very happy to hear everything you were saying, and then I just wanted to uh, make a comment on what happens to me once that I went from New Houston to New Orleans, Louisiana, New Orleans, and then I stopped at this restaurant, and beside the restaurant there was a museum, with painting, paints and everything from that area, and when I started looking at the paints, I had this feeling, and I just feel great, I was trying to understand the paintings and what was happening in the paintings, and when I was about to leave, the lady asked me, well, what do you think about this? And everything I said to her, it was already in the leaflet they give away, because I had the same feeling, the same thing, experienced the same feelings, and she goes like, oh my God. And then she showed me the pamphlet, and it was everything that I just told her. It was written already. And she ended up giving me a free paint. And it's how, I just, I said, hey, you can appreciate things and transpire, and let people know. I do that every time when I see someone doing a good job, uh, making a good dish for me in the restaurant, or, just doing something. And you let them know, hey, you did good, thank you for, and then you give them a tip or whatever. But this is when, thanks to what you were saying, I can recognize that maybe I'm in the right path. Of course, I had to, don't feel confident and, like, oh, well, I'm doing good. No. I just said that I keep doing, stay on the path,
Yes.
and,
Keep finding. Yes. Keep finding things that you can work on. And always with the intention, finding new things to work on. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that word, intentions. What is behind what you want to do? What is behind that you thinking, your actions? I like that, and I appreciate everything you say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. Susan, please go ahead. You are muted, Susan.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Hi, Sheila. How are you?
Susan. Fine. Long time.
I know, a long time. We're both widows now.
Yep.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions, but one was the unresolved feelings, triggers. I also had a hidden past trauma. What kinds of things did you get involved in, or did you? Because I'm seeing, I go along thinking that there's not stuff, but who knows?
You mean like what triggers I discovered in myself?
No, not necessarily, but how'd you go about finding those or getting in touch with
how did I do?
Past trauma?
The way that I discovered them would be the reaction when I would see people's reaction to something I said.
Ah,
So whereas before people would react a certain way and I would ignore it. Then I would say, I would ask a question and as to why they said what they said or something like that. And then I would reflect on it and try to be aware of it next time. So that was for me. I remember the first one was for me when years ago, even before I started, but it was the most marked one when my brother-in-law told me, Sheila, you're so critical. And I was such a judgmental, something like that. I was so shocked that he should tell me that. I thought that, oh my God, how rude to tell me that. But what I did is I started becoming aware of, like, for instance, he told me I used to criticize too much. So what I did is every time it became to a point where I would start criticizing and then I didn't notice it until after I criticized. And then next thing I would catch myself criticizing. And then the next thing it was I criticized, I would realize it maybe just before I started criticizing or when I just said it. And then I would immediately replace it with something nice. And then after a while, you don't, if you criticize, you do it deliberately. So, where it went from being in an unconscious way of acting to a conscious one. If I wanted to criticize, I did it, but it was it was conscious. So that was one of my big ones, and then mainly like that, or I remember in a relationship where somebody told me your mind wanders. And sometimes I have friends that tell me that. So I have to be conscious of that. So I try to work on that, just to be present with people. Not all the time am I good at it, but it's my intention to do it. And so I try. So it's not easy because a lot of the, we can work on things that are very obvious to us, but there are so many things that may not be so much obvious and people won't tell us. Like for instance, I had a husband who people would tell me that they would put up with him because they weren't married to him. They didn't have to see him all the time. But if you told that to my husband, he would say, are you kidding me? They all love me. Nobody says anything. Then he was not aware of what everybody was thinking or saying, and he wasn't willing to do anything about it. But so I think it's being aware of what people tell you, being aware of people's reactions, being aware of, I think that's really the way that in my opinion, I've been able to identify, mainly because people don't particularly like saying it unless, they're really your friends and they tell you. Does that answer your question?
yes. Thank you very much.
Nice to see
Pablo.
you.
Thank you, Jenny. Sheila, it was a beautiful presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your purpose and what it means to you. No? I would like to add something. If my will is to do the will of God, then I have to translate those values that the spiritual fragment promotes through my soul into meanings that I can project in my mind as ideals, no? The ideal of how to do something or how to act when I face a situation, for example. Then I have to visualize them, the meanings, and make a sincere attempt to apply them in my daily life. Because otherwise I'm doing nothing, no? I'm just thinking and doing nothing.
Right.
So I think that we all agree that we are trying to do good. And to do that, we have to be better. It's very important to try for each one of us to be better every day. Faith and love are the forces that can propel us along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But each one of us must to decide to do it. And not only decide, we need to act as we understand is for each one of us to do the will of God, the Father, right? And then after all this, as you say, we hope to be also better persons, better parents, better friends, better brothers, no? And finally, I would like to remember something, that one day we shall be so perfect that we shall be able to be in the personal presence of Father in paradise.
Mhm.
So it was a beautiful presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Darlene, please go ahead.
I agree. It's a wonderful presentation that you've done, and I applaud you. And I hope to hear more and more of this type presentation being made on the internet from those who are students of the papers. I wish I had had your caregiver's guide many years ago. Because having gone through this situation with several members of our family, it's want to be, it's on learn as you go, because we don't really have a lot of guidance in that level. And I, of course, have two of your books have arrived, Awakening to the Spirit of the Father, which I'm reading there and making notes in it, on more than anything else as my certain words to sensitivity of words. And so I've begun doing that more and more. But one of the things that I found that was very helpful in this topic on this is learning to ask questions, ask to receive. And so I've always asked, what do you want, what am I to do today to be in alignment with God's will for me? And we developed off of something that is very helpful. If you know kinesiology at all, we have discovered that you can learn to do this on your own, and asking the question, a yes or no questions, bringing these things down to question, is what I'm doing now in alignment with God's will for me? Okay. And then being able to put your fingers together, your thumb and your fingers together, and then the other one and linked it like this, and ask yes or no questions. And if you cannot get your finger apart, the answer is yes. If you can't keep them together, if it's a no, you can't keep them together. You teach yourself these skills to be able to communicate with the inner spirit, the divine spirit, because we have this little thing called doubt that creeps in. I'm not sure that I should do that, And so we have to find ways to learn to look within ourselves for guidance. And because I began having quote unquote assignments that I felt, oh no, not me, I'm not qualified. Somebody else can do that better than I can. And I started letting doubt creep in more and more. And then that's when I'd start putting this to the test. And so that would be something that you could add to this caregivers, because sometimes we're not quite sure what is the first thing to do. And so I'm eager to hear what you added to it, because this is something that more and more people that I'm working with now are dealing with this, and with the jail ministry, with the population growing and things happening, and they're not doing the recovery. Your material is so needed right now. So my thing is just really, really, really do this. The last thing that I'm going to say, the solution that I found in our family was co-housing, is having family members live in to take care of and help us out. In other words, I have great-grandchildren and grandchildren, and by them coming in and helping out, I've now taken in 3 that are dementia patients that no longer have to go to nursing homes that really can't take care of them well. And so this is a solution that we are developing through the Urantia community. And I made a commitment the first of the year that I'm only going to be working with those who truly are studying the papers, because what you're doing is what everyone should be doing, applying what God has divinely inspired you to do. And I think this is why we have the population in the jails growing, is because people are not doing what they're divinely inspired to be called. And I just am so richly blessed to have people like this that are in this room, and people like my parents who guided me. My mother was that one that was, I could have never asked for a better set of parents. And this is exactly what she would do. What does God want me to do today? And that's what that was always her question. What do we do today to do God's will? So everyone should be so richly blessed. And thank you for stepping forward to make that happen.
Thank you.
Gary?
Thank you, Jeannie.
Hello.
Sheila,
Hi. Hi, how are you? It's been a
Good.
while.
thank you, and same to you as well. We still have fond memories of you and your husband coming to visit you us in the United Kingdom. And I know we had a very entertaining weekend, and thank you once again for that. And also helpful for me when I was on the ISB with you. What you're doing with dementia is something incredible, because it needs more of this. It's a terrible disease. Unless you know somebody who's got it, you cannot put that into perspective. As you know, I was the ISB membership chair for 2 5-year terms, and my predecessor, Kathy Jones, gave me this. I'd like to read it to you. And I do this every day with my thought adjuster, with my thought adjuster. And this is what she gave me, personally, 1-to-1. If your own mind doesn't serve you well, you can take the mind of Jesus that will never fail you. That comes out of the Urantia book. And then you look into the mirror, you do this. I'm available to more good than ever experienced, realized, or imagined before. And you're actually, when you do that, you're actually talking to your thought adjuster as well. So you're set for the day then, or you're set for the evening, whatever. But thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to be like Gaetan looking over the wonderful presentation. And I wish you well, and hopefully we'll see each other in the flesh sometime in the near future.
Yes, I hope so. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Jeannie.
My pleasure, Gary.
One,
Diane, go ahead.
I'm wondering if there are any people who've seen this presentation that would like to begin a group to follow your steps one by one and discuss it.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'd like to see if there's some names that could go in the chat.
Gaetan, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My own experience with this idea of doing the Father's will, I found out that the more I pray, the more I meditate every day, the more I get to know God, the more it becomes imperative that I have to do His will.
Yeah.
But then the question arose, how do I know I am really doing the will of God in everything I do? Of course, today I know most of the answer to that question. But then there's also this question that sometimes I ask myself, how can I have the certitude, the strong feeling, because I know that doing the will of God, most of the time, what we might feel as I am doing the will of God is mostly subjective. It's rarely an affirmation, a strong affirmation, like, I'm sure I'm doing the will of God. There's something like it's a progressive things that we do. And the thing is that we have the intention of doing the will of God. But do we really enact that intention as much as God wants us to enact that intention? How close are we to realize the full will of God when we do that? And I know that most of it is that through growing spiritually, that as the closer we come to the thought adjuster, in synchronicity with his will, like Jesus, we're able to do really the will of God. But for me, the challenge is that when we do have to make decisions, and those decisions impact the life of others, especially when we have to work with the revelation itself. Every actions we make, that whenever we are involved in the work of this mission, the mission of getting this revelation out to the world, every decision we make, and if we ask ourselves, are we making the right decision? With God, does he exactly wants me to do what I'm about to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have the same question. What I have found in my life, and I'm sure everybody has it different, but what I feel happens is that once you start once you start connecting, and again, the question is, how deep is the connection? But once you start connecting, then your actions begin to be as if you were in alignment with the spirit. And things begin in my life, especially in the last 2 years. I mean, with that everything was so uncertain, and I was going through so much. The things that happened, whether it was, I had to do something, but I needed to do something, and then all of a sudden, whatever it is that was keeping me from doing it was resolved, or I would meet somebody that, that would give me what I was looking for or what I was needing, or just serendipitous moments where all of a sudden, you know what, I think I'm in the right track. So I think those happen more and more, because it's like what Jesus said. That's what happened to him, right? Somewhere Jesus papers, it says, that once you're start making that connection, then anything that you do happens because you're in alignment with that, with the spirit. So I think, it may begin very little, we may begin experiencing a little bit, but I believe that living like what Jesus said, when we live in the kingdom of God more and more and more and more, those things will be, everything will be happening so smoothly. I believe that. I don't know. I just from, and also the strangest thing, like I'll share the latest one I was just sharing with Jeannie today. I decided that I was going to join a date site, which I never thought I would do that, but I joined a date site. And and so a few people contacted me, and for whatever the reason, I chose this person to contact. Well, it just happens that this person was an elder in the church of in the Seventh-day Adventists. He was an elder for like 20 years, but somehow he lost his faith because he had to do a lot of interpreting of the Bible, and he knows the Bible by heart, and he couldn't do it in a good heart, when he believed that there were things in the Bible that weren't accurate. And so they kicked him out of the church. His family divorced him. His kids refused to talk to him. And for about 10 years, he hasn't any faith. And he told me that when I met him. He told me, I don't have any faith. I don't even try. I don't have any faith. So maybe we talked for a couple of weeks, but lately, about 2 weeks ago, I gave him the book about Jesus, the Urantia book. I told him, just access it and just read the Urantia, the things on Jesus. And I said, I told him, I said, I don't know the Bible like you do it. And I said, and you'll be able to read the Urantia book and be able to see his connection to the Bible. I said, I wish I could do that. so that I would be able to better speak with people who are Christians. I said, you have this amazing ability to talk that you know, at least read it and see what you find. He has not been able to put it down. He says that it has helped him so much that he's all the time texting me all the things that he's finding, the connections. He now is reading the Lucifer Rebellion and all the different papers in the, you know. So, and you know, and I have never gone back to the website, to the date site, because I'm not really interested. So what on earth got me to go into that website and then connect with that person and that person to be, you know. So I think we're constantly guided. If you're allowed and if you have your intention to do that will, then you're guided to people and you're guided to do whatever it is that you have to do. You know, with me is writing a lot of these books. And one of the things I think I'm going to do is take The Heaven Is Not the Last Stop and break it into 4 sections so that I can simplify what I wrote so that more people are able to access it. So, and you know, I think that's the whole thing. Like what you said, is just having the intention, act, and knowing that that's what your intent, and trusting that whatever is supposed to happen happens without thinking about it, you know, without worrying about it either. At least that has been my experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
And I guess everyone feels differently, you know, about how they perceive they're doing the will of God.
Yes.
And the thing I believe that the more we get closer to God, the more that certitude, the more the fact that we're certain that we're doing the will of God is in fact really what God wants us to do. We're following His plan.
Yes, exactly. And I think also you feel it in your connection. You know, if you feel connected, you know, you feel that connection, then you know that you're going in the right direction, or at least you're hoping, because you feel connected. You know, so that's very important, that feeling that you're connected. You know, everybody is going to be affected different. Everybody's going, like you said, everybody's going to interpret things differently. But I think just like we're all indwelt by the Spirit of the Father, there are things that we will experience the same, you know, and one of those things is that connection.
Mm-hmm. And what you said in your presentation, you know, you said many things about evolving ourselves in many different area of ourselves, like perception. And if we look at Jesus, he used to say, you know, that to do the will of God for Jesus was doing the 3 values of divinity, which was truth, beauty, and goodness. And what you said in your presentation is like cultivating, enhancing the ways that we perceive those 3 realities. How we perceive truth, how we perceive beauty, and how we perceive goodness. And the more we know about those values, in fact, the more we know about God, and the more we can express those values in our own life, which would be, in fact, doing the will of God, when you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Luis, do you want to say something?
Thank you, Jeannie. And hello to many good old friends, and greetings to all of those that I do not know. Thank you, Sheila, for a very insightful presentation.
Thank you.
Great reminders of a lot of the good works that are always awaiting us on a daily basis. I guess I just wanted to share a different perspective, perhaps, on the doing of the will of God. Sometimes when I have my conversations with God, I pray that I may find ways in which not to obstruct His will. Very often we consciously or unconsciously are doing things that are not necessarily going against His will, but are obstructing His will. And one of the main areas where I can see that we are obstructing the will of God is by somehow delaying the service that we are supposed to be doing, because in the final analysis, one of the common themes that I see all of us sharing is that if the will of God was to create this mastery universe so that he could experience himself, each one of us is a piece of art that is doing that service to God, experiencing for him, and that makes us an incredibly valuable human being in our own right, because we are making that contribution to him. But sometimes when we are delaying the opportunities to do the service that God expects from us, that really means that we are delaying solving some of the conflicts that we have with other people, mending those relationships that have been becoming, ever so slightly more distant, that we keep our bad habits on a daily basis, that we keep competing instead of collaborating, that we keep trying to profiteer instead of try to, be of contribution without personal gain, and so on and so forth. So I guess I was just hoping to hear your perspectives on how we sometimes, there's a lot of good things that we can do, but how can we do better those things that are more human traits, position us into doing, that end up obstructing what the will of God would be?
Let me see if I understand the question. So you're saying, how can we stop ourselves from obstructing ourselves from doing the will of God?
I guess in a simplified way, I believe we self-sabotage a lot.
Yes.
In our lives, in the practical daily living of our lives, we're constantly self-sabotaging, or even unconsciously sabotaging others from becoming the best version of themselves. Because for me, ultimately, the ultimate will of God is that we become the best version of ourselves, given everything, all the different divine gifts that have been given to us. And so we have a very clear guidance on the Urantia book with a checklist of basically all the things that you've listed that we are supposed to be doing to try to improve ourselves. But at the same time, sometimes psychologically or behaviorally, we are still following the same old paths of reactivity, emotional reactivity, that keeps sabotaging ourselves, or that we keep sabotaging relationships with others. And sometimes those get manifested, as I was trying to share, in broken relationships, or envy, or jealousy, or relationships that are just not working. In the end, the will of God is manifested in relationships, and how those fruits of the Spirit take shape in those relationships. So sometimes I like to look at those things that we actually need to work on, which are negative, which are an important addition to the positives that we are also trying to do. I hope that made more sense now.
I think I get, yes. And I think those things are things that you have to become aware. And again, with intention, because if you're in a relationship, and that will depend on everybody, it depends on your background, it depends on your childhood, it depends on experiences. Everybody in a household experiences their parents differently. So, what you may have an issue with the father, and the other kids, your brothers and sisters, may say, what the hell, how did that come about? How did you see them like that? So everybody has different experience. I believe that anything that has to do, especially emotionally, that is such a personal thing, and it's the hardest, in my opinion, because you have to become conscious of it. You can't do anything about what you're not conscious. You can have intention, but you cannot work on something you don't know. And then there are people, and then you also have to ask yourself whether if somebody brings something up to you, whether you're even willing to listen to it. You know, you might just dismiss it because they told you something and you're like, eh. So I think the only way to work on your emotional stuff is being aware. Like, for instance, you know, how, and you have to take one at a time, because I think trying to solve all your emotional stuff is difficult, but, you know, I think one at a time. So for instance, like I shared before, mine was that I was critical and that was affecting relationship. And somebody told me so boldly that it, you know, it made me become aware of it. And then I had to slowly work on that. The other for me was working on vulnerability. You know, you don't want to be too vulnerable because you can get hurt. So then I had to explore, you know, what is it that how can I get hurt? Or, you know, what does it mean to be vulnerable? And I had to work through that, you know, a lot. But, you know, the people that can help you the most is the people around you. You know, watching their reaction, asking them, you know, they don't have to be mean to say something, you know, but that's by doing that, by asking people, that's increases your vulnerability. You know, also, you know, you're working on your vulnerability, but, you know, asking somebody, you know, what is it that I could do today for you to make it your day better, you know, or what is it that I could do myself, you know, how could I improve myself so that we can have a better relationship? I think it's very personal, and you just have to, you know, identify one at a time. Don't try to identify too many because it becomes too difficult, but one at a time.
Thank you.
Does that make
What you
sense?
share. Yes, it does. And somehow you remind me of, some of you might have read The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Mhm.
And a psychologist and clinical psychologist as well, I think. And what you made me think of is the delay of gratification. Delaying gratification is a very important way in which we can try to accommodate the will of God and avoid obstructing the will of God, which can lead us to self-forgetfulness in the right kind of way, you know.
Mhm.
And the last thought I would like to leave with everyone, sorry that I'm taking too long, is sometimes it is also the will of God that we go through struggle and through all of these issues and broken relationships. And it's hard to sometimes integrate that into our consciousness because we always have the ideals built in to believing that things can be more righteous. But sometimes we also have to surrender and accept that when things are beyond our control, and it is also God's will and part of his experiencing our own lives in letting go some of the things that will occur, just be as well.
Yeah. One thing that I would add to that is, I don't think, this is my opinion, I don't think it's the will of God that we suffer and go through pains and things like that. I think it's the will of God. I think that's part of the fact that we're all growing in towards perfection. So we live in an imperfect world, and humans have created a lot of confusion. But I think it is the will of God that we develop those qualities that are able to go through those things with as much grace and calmness as possible.
Yeah, this is the fullness of the experience, right? His will is that we live to the fullest that experience of living. And that will also include a lot of the happenings that result from us being imperfect beings in imperfect relationships, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darlene, please go ahead.
As I've been listening to the people making comments, I'm thinking about how the presentation that you just made could be so easily adapted to so many different crisis situations. You mentioned about the singles the situation. One of the things that I thought, great, this would be awesome to develop for single outreach. I've been a widow now for since 2010. And I went through that, the problems and the challenges that, making that adjustment to live without a partner. And I felt that, again, the guidance was to live without a partner for a long period of time, because I had been every kind of relationship except single. I was a daughter, I was a mother, I was a grandmother, a great grandmother, and all of these things was very much family and etc. But I just never got to be just me.
Yeah.
But that was an experience, and I'm thinking, that was the and so I'm thinking that this program would very easily adapt to those who are going through recent losses and learning how to reach out, because we're designed to have basically a partnership with a male female. And when you've lost that partner that you've lived with for raising 7 children and et cetera, it's traumatic. And I can see how if I had a guideline like you'd put together, it would have been so much easier to do that. So maybe one of the things is to add this to your list of round 2, it's of reaching out to single groups and starting maybe something called, like we have this thing called Parents Without Partners. Well, how about for us seniors, we start one that says Grandparents Without Partners, or grandparents without partners, because we are aging. And that's one of the things that I've noticed within the Urantia society is we're not attracting the young people. And maybe this is something that grandparents could learn to do if you would present this in a way that would be able to do this, because this is where I'm finding the people that are in the jails and people that are having all the traumas, the suicides and etc., are because they don't have this purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm just, again, encouraging you, keep on going and saying, okay, what can I do to help? Where can I be of service to you? How can I help you with what you are doing now? Because you're reaching out there and making a difference. So how can we all be of service?
Yeah.
Start this group on a weekly basis, please.
Okay.
Or daily even.
Alfonso, please go ahead.
I just wanted that something to Darlene. See, I'm 73, but the way you express yourself, you talk, it gives me hope, that I wish I will be able to just talk like you and express myself like you. Jesus, it's just very clear, And then, like you said, we senior citizens, we go through a lot of stuff, And I was going to mention something that what happens to you in the store, it happens to me last week. I came out of the store, and I had something underneath of the shopping cart that I was not aware. I didn't remember have it there. And then the lady checking me out, she said, "Oh, you okay?" And I went out. And it wasn't that I got into my car, I arrived to my car and started unloading the shopping cart, and then I noticed there was something. Oh my God! And I noticed I didn't pay for that, but it just felt this guilt. I said, oh my God, I didn't want to do this, but it's just my mind didn't recall that I had something in the bottom, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I said, maybe if I go and tell them that I didn't pay this, they're gonna tell something to the lady that checked me out because she didn't look well, And I didn't know if I was gonna put her in trouble, so I end up taking with me, But I just feel like, oh my God, I didn't want to do this, but it just my mind didn't help me, and for us, I forget things, and my daughter always says, The only thing you don't forget is your head because it's attached to your body. She's always making jokes about me forgetting things. But yeah, I admire Darlene, you know, and Sheila, I know I met you in one of the conference that we went, you know, and I know I talked to you and whatever, but I just feel pretty good about being in this with you, uh, with everything you put down, and like you said, uh, um, invest or take time to be in nature, you know, and like I know most of us, I like to watch PBS, you know, and I like to see the nature, you know, how the animals work together, how nature is all connected, and you know, it just it might not be important to others, but it's for us that we're trying to learn how the world works, how nature, how the universe works. It's important for us to know as much as we can, you know. And like I said, you really remind me and put all those things that we got to be doing, and it's great, you know. It's great. It's not going to be hard because I'm already into that, you know. But now I do with more purpose, you know, and I'm just very happy. You know, at this moment, I just feel great, and I'm very happy to be here today. And
Thank you.
thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Alfonso, I'll be 80 in October. So you're
Awesome.
you're a youngster.
You don't sound like 80. You don't sound like 80. Okay.
That's because I love to live. I love life.
Great.
Belen, please go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to your beautiful presentation, Sheila.
Thank you.
I think I was very new to the Urantia movement here in the United States when I think I saw you in Madison, Wisconsin, I believe.
Oh, yes,
And,
yes.
and I got your book, Heaven is the Last Stop. So thank you for your presentation. There's a lot of sharing of personal experiences, you know. It's not what we learn, but it's how we experience life also, right?
Exactly.
And I like the way you connect the mind and heart with the use of neuron cells. You know, 65% of the heart neuron cells is like also the neuron cells on the brain. So I think it's and especially that you're coming out with other books. So I'm looking forward, and also you have a speaking tour about dementia and other caregiving stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane, please go ahead.
Yes, I'm wondering if the presentation you made today is also replicated in any of your books. I would really like to follow the steps that you laid out, and you've laid it out in such a nice, logical, step-to-step way. It's just a blueprint, and if you can contemplate each step one at a time and begin to integrate it into your life, it would be a very, very big help to everyone. So
Okay.
I'm wondering, where else can we find this layout of the steps you have?
I wrote it in my last section of the book, Heaven is Not the Last Stop. I think I have developed maybe I can simplify a lot of what I did, and I have it in great detail in my book, Heaven is Not the Last Stop, on this last section, Living the Religion of the Spirit. Yeah, in the last section of my book, Heaven is Not the Last Stop, I have it there.
Thank you. Then I'll form a group. We'll all do it together.
That's that. Did you ask me something?
I said, then I'd like to start a group so we can all do the steps together.
Well, that's something to think about. Yeah, we could work on that. Maybe send an email or something.
Well, I don't maybe I can send it to you.
Maybe what?
Maybe I can send it to you. I don't have everybody's
Yes.
email.
Yeah, you can send it to me.
Anyone else? Some question for Sheila? David, please go ahead.
I think we can do the will of God in any walk of life that we find ourselves in, no matter what genre or career we may have taken that particular path in our life. There's a very curious comment that's made in that section of the Urantia book that talks about reality response. And there are individuals who are actually trained from their youth to perform certain specific tasks. And what's really curious about this is that they say the average length of time that's involved with these individuals who are playing pivotal roles in the outcome of planetary destiny, their time period averages 10 minutes. Stop to consider that an individual can be trained all their life through the seraphim and the thought adjuster to perform a task that on average is 10 minutes. Now, these tend to be individuals who play critical roles in whatever it may be. It could be science. I think they're mostly talking about people in political circles. Nonetheless, that same concept can be carried down to the average individual as you walk through life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you walk with God, you just naturally want to share insights that you may have learned through life with people. So you can't be afraid to just blurt things out. I mean, it's good to know your audience. It's good to know your audience. It's good to know origins and history and whatnot. But you can't be afraid to just come out and speak the truth, because you can really impact somebody's life. You can really make things click for them. Mm-hmm. So I think this struggle to find the will of God, there's a lot of steps. You have to get yourself in line, and then you can help others. So thank you for your presentation. It's good, but we always have to remember that one of the things Jesus did was he kept all his apostles out in public. You know, they didn't become, aesthetics or ascetics. I'm sorry, ascetics. So I think just wanting to be around people, just wanting to be around strangers. Did it ever occur to you that you're being motivated by your thought adjuster and your seraphim? That seems like a very mortal kind of thing, but it's an influence of our Creator. So, I know we all struggle. We're mortals. Hey, we want our planet to be in light and life now. But stop to consider that Jesus was here 2,000 years ago. He's a Creator son. Mm-hmm. After 2,000 years, shouldn't we be in light and life? No, we are not. No, we are not. So I think that we mere mortals have to just realize that life is just putting one foot in front of the other and racking our brains and trying to figure out what the will of God is. Hey, just put one foot in front of the other and you're doing it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Would you like to close the session? Give us a reflection, Sheila. Thank you.
A reflection. Thank you, Father. And all of our thought adjusters for this wonderful meeting that we all shared. Hopefully we all learn from each other. We learn from each other and we take what we can and move forward with it so that we all can grow in our love of God and in our service for one another. Amen.
Amen.